All right, you guys, welcome to today's session. Can I fit a pool? If you haven't run up against this question with your clients yet, I am sure it is something that will be in your future at some point because inevitably, especially as summer is approaching, that is something that everyone dreams of. Now, actually making that happen can be a little difficult, mainly because it requires us to ask the question, can that lot fit a pool? And there are a number of factors that go into play when trying to figure that out. Many of them are things that take a little bit of time. And so Jeff is someone that has a lot of experience with this. Creative Solutions, I apologize, Creative, what is your company name?
Carolina Creations.
Carolina Creations. I had it beforehand and I totally lost it. But you guys do exactly that. And not only do they work with pools, but they also can do a number of other projects in your yard. And so today he's going to walk us through exactly what it takes to answer that question for your client and be more proactive about it. So that hopefully when we're out in the field, we can provide our clients some peace of mind on what that process is going to look like and help guide them to the finish line. So Jeff, thank you for doing this today. We're excited to learn from you. As always, you guys, the more engaging you can be, the more interactive it is for everyone else. And 9 times out of 10, if there's a question you have, it's something that someone else has thought as well. So feel free to raise your hand or just chime in. We would love to kind of keep that conversation going. So Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what we're here to talk about today?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kate. So yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of backstory, I used to be I'm a broker in recovery. So I started actually with Mr. Horrigan. We were basically starting at the same time before the last like great financial crisis. And I did the job for 5 years straight. And what I ended up, I ended up leaving that another career and coming back to construction pre-pandemic. And as I started permitting projects, I kept thinking back to, oh my gosh, like we didn't know any of this as brokers. I don't even know who I would have asked in the office. So I understand your job, how hard it is. I know that you're very liability, averse, and we want to be as up to date and educated on this kind of stuff as we can. So what I'd love to do is I've got a little presentation. We'll start with a couple slides about us. Then I've got some war stories that we can talk about. And then to finish out, we'll touch briefly on those key things that you want to keep looking for. So should be pretty informative. We can go ahead and get started. So the other thing I just told Kate is when everybody else was getting a crash course on running Zoom meetings, in the pandemic, we were out working. So if I stumble, I apologize. So let's see here. So what's the best way to share, Kate?
If you should have sharing capabilities. So if you're looking at your screen in the
Uh-huh.
bottom center, there's a
I think I
little.
got it. Okay. Let's go screen. Let's go screen two. So the title slide here, can we add a pool? We're selfishly as pool guys, we called it that, but it's really, you can see in the context under there, or any other structure, an ADU, a garage, a greenhouse, anything else that you're trying to do, anything that has to be permitted with the city, town, whatever, these rules will apply for all of those things, with maybe some minor differences there. Let's see here. So a little bit about us. We're locally owned and operated. We started in 2018. So before the flood of pool interest happened, we started partnered with some friends of ours down at the coast. But we're still a pretty small company. We're not corporatized. People can get a hold of us, and we try to do everything we can to make the process pretty smooth. But you can take a look at us online. All of our reviews are positive. We do concrete and fiberglass swimming pools, but we do outdoor kitchens. We've got a great line of aluminum outdoor kitchens that can be installed very quickly, and they're great. And if the customer ever changes their mind and wants to move the kitchen or take it with them when they go, they can pick them up and leave, other than a traditional masonry kitchen that you have to leave behind. So kitchens have become a big thing for us. Sometimes we'll do fireplaces and fire pits at the projects as we're working, and we generally will show up and put a design together for the customer. And then if they want decking, we'll go ahead and install the decking. Some pool companies don't do that, but we'll do the concrete, travertine, marble, whatever decking they want, fire pits, water features. So we try to turnkey the whole project. And if you've got somebody coming in from out of town that doesn't have time to build those relationships, that might be of benefit. So as we're, once we get done, if you guys have any other questions about us, we're glad to tell you more. But when somebody asks us, hey, we're looking at this house, can we put a pool in here? The list of things that we go over is on the screen there. The first thing we look for, and one of you already mentioned it, is the impervious restrictions. So every town, county, everybody around here has some sort of plan for the impervious surfaces on the property and making sure that we don't use too much. So we'll get into that in detail a little bit further, but that's the number one thing we look for. But we're looking for easements, if it's in the county septic systems, setbacks, whether they be HOA setbacks or town level setbacks. Blue line creeks and watersheds are a pretty hot topic and something we definitely got to be careful of. And then for you guys, as you're looking around and somebody says, hey, I definitely want this pool, garage, whatever it is, trying to find a property that's not too sloping, it will save them a ton of money. So we'll touch on that a little bit. So I wanted to go ahead and jump into the war stories because I thought it sounded more interesting that way. So I'm right now, can you see the survey that's up in front? You got it. Okay. So this is a project that we did in maybe 2018. It's been a long time. The customer came from California, made it very clear to their agent that he had to be able to install a pool. So that's what his agent went out looking for. I didn't redact the names as much as I should have, but we'll use this as an example because it all worked out just fine. But this is in Cary, which impervious wise, this lot was in great shape. And you can see in here we're 0.85 acres. And if I zoom in a little bit, you got a ton of backyard here. So the agent probably asked the listing agent, could we put a pool in there? And everybody says, sure, I'm sure you could. There's tons of space back there. They closed on the house, called us, and then when they handed us this survey, that's when we ran into the uh-ohs. So if you can see here, you got the house, there was an existing patio, and then just a huge backyard that goes all the way back to a pond. So we took a look at that and tried to figure out where we could work, and we realized that with all of the easements on this property, there was almost no space to work with. So if you guys can see my cursor here, there was a creek that ran through the property, and that was a blue line creek. In the proposal that I'll send you, there's a link that you can go and search and find out if there is a protected blue line creek on the property. But that creek meant that you have to have a 50-foot setback off of the creek. So this yellow line was the 50 feet away from the creek on the original survey. And you cannot build anything in there unless you get a variance from the state. And if you had let's just say you had a major need, like a child that needed physical therapy or something, you might get a variance, but that's about how much it takes. I've never heard of anyone getting one. So the yellow line is how far we got to stay off the creek. And then this pink line is how far we have to stay off of the retention pond. And then this blue line is a 20-foot drainage easement from, I don't know if that's the city or the neighborhood, but I think it's for the HOA to access the side of the property. So out of that 0.85 acres, we are left with almost nothing. And this particular guy was pretty litigious, and he was, in the process, he mentioned possibly suing because he made it clear that he wanted to be able to put a pool in this backyard. And that was really the instigator for me initially thinking maybe we should put something together to talk to the brokers out there to help them out. So didn't leave us with very much. Let's see, I got one more tab here. What we ended up doing is we put a 15 by 30 pool in, which is a little small for our area. And I think the customer would have gone larger, but that you can barely see behind here. There's that line for the creek. There's the line for the pond. And then the easement on the right for the drainage. So if you'll see, we barely put any pool deck around it. I want to say it was maybe 400 square feet, and our average is closer to 1,000. We even had to clip this corner to get it approved. So We ended up out of all that land almost not being able to do anything. One more other little note is that the town of Cary would not let you put your pool barrier, your fence in an easement. So the fence had to come way in off the property line because of this drainage easement, and could not go too far into the back either. So we ended up making it work, but those are, what, easements, blue line creeks, and setbacks all on one property, and that would be an easy one to spot if you got a survey earlier. We ended up getting the pool in. I think they would have much preferred to have more decking around it, but we were able to get that guy in there and give him a pool anyway. So then the next one that I've got it was out in the county. So this one's on septic. This customer also told their agent, like, we are 100% putting in a pool. So can you help us make sure that we find the perfect lot? So the agent, I assume, goes out and says, well, let's look for a big lot. They find a property out in the county that's 3/4 of an acre. And they ask the listing agent, hey, could we put a pool in this property? The listing agent says, yes. As a matter of fact, they had a pool permit pulled before, but they just ended up not building the pool. Well, I think we know why. If you look here, this is our septic map, and you guys will know how to find these online. They actually already had a pool drawn in to say, hey, you can put a pool right here. Here's our septic field, and here's the septic repair field. So the agent felt comfortable. They closed on the house. Once we got there, we took the survey, and this survey, which we'll touch on in a few minutes, did not actually calculate the impervious. The surveyor did not include it. So they never knew at closing that this house was already over the amount of impervious space that they were allowed. So that was a survey. When we started putting our design together, I'm just going to zoom this in. They ended up telling, we calculated that without this paver patio in the back, because we had to rip that out to come up with some impervious, and it was built on the septic field anyway, which isn't recommended. But without that extra patio, the existing impervious on this property was 4,800 square feet, and in this part of the county on septic, 5,000 was their maximum. So they basically had, by the time we go and try to pull a permit and it goes across the stormwater reviewer's desk, we're not going to have any impervious to work with. So on this particular property, we ended up having to hire an engineer, a stormwater engineer, because we wanted to add 2,000 square feet of impervious to this property. So in certain instances, which this pool qualified for, they will allow you to install a stormwater retention device to catch the first 3 inches of rain that happens after a rain. So we ended up having to install basically a giant septic tank at the end of the driveway that catches all of the water and over a 3-day period pumps it off. It was very tricky. You had to find a place that was downhill of a impervious surface that would flow away. And then we were not allowed to cross over any of the septic. So it was really, we had to thread the needle to get the device in. I want to say that device at the time was about $15,000, and it's a full septic tank, circuitry for pumps, drain lines. It was a pretty complex project, and that was in 2018. So in today's dollars, it's probably $30,000 if you qualify to add more impervious to a property like this. So that one we ended up making it work, but it was tough because nobody knew to look for those type things. So if that, did anybody have any questions about that? Has anybody run into something similar that they like to share?
No, but very interesting.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, good. Thank you. So
And
let's
my only thought in the process of all of this is, even knowing all of this, when you're out in the field, how do you even start to cover your bases without a survey? Like, if there's no survey in the disclosures, as you said, like, these people are looking at large lots. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but even with this knowledge, it definitely sounds concerning as a liability.
Yep, it can be tricky. So again, we'll come back. The things that we really care about are impervious data, any easements, septic systems, setbacks, creeks, and the slope of the property. So I'll share this proposal so that you can take a look. If you were to dig back in later on, I put this in the Bix Like a Scary headline. So here's this. That's an article from WREL about a homeowner trying to sell a home that he had built a patio that put him over impervious, or maybe it wasn't even trying to sell it, but that they made him rip out a patio because it put him over his impervious limits. Surveying is big. We definitely want a survey and a good a current one and one that calculates all of the impervious data for you.
Hey, Jeff,
Um,
real quick, would you mind explaining what impervious surface is? And
yeah,
then-
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So anything that's that the rainwater is not going to filter through and permeate through, like the house, like the roof, the water will run off. Any pavement, even a compacted parking pad of gravel or artificial turf would count as impervious surface. So they want to, they want when it rains, all of the oils and fertilizers and things, they want those to filter in instead of just washing down and flooding the eastern part of the state every time it rains hard. So a lot of it is a water quality issue, but they're trying to they want to limit the amount of Wake County that is paved so it doesn't cause problems for everybody else. So there are state level laws, and then every town municipality has their own solution to how they want to meet the goals of the state. So I won't go into a whole lot of details because the rules are different everywhere and they change all the time. So we'll go through a high level and then ways that you can find out for your client what will actually work. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, totally. It's
Okay.
like about absorption. And that I see on your slide, that answers one of the questions I had, which is when we're talking about all of that, it's like the pavers and the concrete surround and all of that counts towards impervious surface, but the pool, like the body of water itself does not, because it can
It does
hold the
not.
water.
Yep. So we look at it and we say, if we just built a pool and you only had your coping, then we could put a pool in for a couple hundred square feet if we needed to. But then you've got grass growing up again, up to the edge of the pool, and you don't have much of a deck. And most people want an area that they can entertain. So it would be great to have at least about 1,000 square feet on a property to make it work. And all of our projects are going to be over $30,000, so they're all going to be permitted. All pools have to be permitted anyway. So that's where we run into this issue. If you were not installing a pool and you just wanted a patio and you called a hardscaper, they're probably not going to pull a permit. I think almost none of them would, and they're not researching this, and they're not going to know that they're putting you over an impervious limit. And most of the time, I think it turns out just fine. But since we have to go get approved to build the project, they pass it across everybody's desk, and if that town municipality has rules around impervious, they'll catch it. So yeah, so the pool is not included. Let's see here. Additional impervious. If we need more, what can we do here? So each municipality has different rules, and I don't want to give you a list of, this town allows this because it can change all the time. I would say what I do most of the time is I'll go into the registered deed site, which I assume you guys would do from time to time, and I'll pull up the recorded plat of that neighborhood. And if it's a newer neighborhood, most of your easements are going to show up on that plat, and they're going to have a listing and say each lot in this neighborhood gets 5,000 square feet, because they usually, when they develop a new neighborhood, they'll carve it up that way. So you can find out what the maximum is on a newer property. Then you just need to know from the survey how much there is existing on that property now. Let's see here. But I think the key thing to take home here is that the guidelines change. Raleigh had a bunch of changes this year. I think, especially if you work in a particular area pretty frequently, if you get this question, I would definitely either during the due diligence period or before call and ask to speak to a plan reviewer and send them the survey and just ask them, because the reason for not giving super detail on what each town does is some of them will say a property developed before 2007 gets this rule, and after 2007 gets this rule, and it just changes so frequently. I would hate for you to go into something remembering a stat from this presentation and it be an outdated rule. So if we get an understanding today of the things to look for, you would definitely want to just give a plan reviewer at the town a call. They'll usually call you back within a day and are usually pretty helpful and just say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Do you see any problem with that? And they'll help you out.
So I have a quick question,
Uh-huh.
and you may be getting to this. I might get ahead of it. How you keep saying on the survey, but a lot of times when you're just showing property and there's no, sometimes the sellers don't have a survey. But if your buyers for sure wants to add a pool, how do we know? How can we, because we can't do a survey for every home they're interested in.
And that's the frustrating part. Hopefully they have one. Let me take a look there. I stumbled onto this tool that's a Wake County or City of Raleigh tool that comes up with an impervious number. I don't think I would trust it. I tried it on a couple of things, but yeah, you're basically going to have a survey to really make that decision. I feel like a lot of the properties that we've got now do have surveys. When I was a broker, we couldn't get people to buy a survey if we paid for it. I mean, and now a lot of the properties they close and the customer immediately hands us a survey. We very rarely have to ask somebody to get one. So that's one of the things that I would ask the listing agent really quickly if they've got it, and if it doesn't list an impervious number, maybe you may have to reach out to that surveyor and see if they can come up with one, because that's going to be a pretty big item.
I get that, like for a lot of if it's sold with I agree with you. I mean, everybody's doing surveys now, or they should be. But let's say it hasn't been, this owner's lived in this house for, 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of them weren't doing surveys back then. That's my question is, how do we, if your buyer says they want to pull, but there's no survey to even look at, then there's really no way of knowing. I mean, you can look where the septic lines are, hopefully, if they have the septic permit, but any easements or setbacks and that sort of thing, how would we know without a survey?
I have pretty decent luck going to the Registry of Deeds site. I can find, if it's not a really old neighborhood, right? If you're going to McGregor Downs, it's going to be a pencil and paper survey, if anything, and no detail. But if I'm looking at a neighborhood that's relatively new, I will go to the property, the search page at, just the property search, find the location in the deed book of that recorded plat, and I'll go take a look at it there. Because especially if it's a newer property, all of that easement data is going to be in the recorded plat. But yeah, it's one of those things that I know it's going to add more time, and you might be off the side, on the sidelines in due diligence, waiting for a survey to come back. But there really is no way to know if you can build without a good survey. I'm trying to think if we've ever built. I think in the past, when people didn't have a survey, we asked them to go get one. I don't think we feel comfortable even permitting it without one. Just who knows where an easement is that didn't get caught. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I rarely am able to get a survey back during due diligence.
Okay.
So, I mean, it just, the way things work, it seems like your due diligence date's 2 to 3 weeks long. Closing is, typically 4. And it seems like most times it's that last week that surveys are coming back. It may be I think it's gotten a little bit better now. I don't know that surveyors are as busy right now as they were in the past, but I guess you just would extend due diligence in hopes of getting that back to make sure it can be done if you don't have the survey. Yeah.
So yeah, the timing is unfortunate, but like I say, if your customer wants to know with all certainty that it can, it's the best option.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we run into a whole lot of properties that we can't find a way to do something, but this is all about you guys looking like an expert, and you don't want to go in and suggest something and then it come back as a dog that they can't do what they want to do, and they kind of, we don't
Right.
want them looking at you. So
Right, just
if
because
you,
it's got a big flat lot that with no, not a lot on it, doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be able to do a pool. So,
correct, especially out in the county.
okay.
So thank you, thank you. So I think the next one I've got, we went into, was that, did I miss a slide? Gotcha. Okay. So I figured I would do a really high level of the different towns that I could remember off the top of my head as far as how they treat the impervious conversation, and then we'll get to the other items that we look at. Raleigh is a little bit tougher than the suburbs. They give an impervious lot percentage according to the zoning of that property. So you would, go in and see what density the property was zoned at, and it'll say you get 20%, 30%, 40%, and you can work out from there. Hopefully there's a survey that spells it all out, but they're pretty tough on things, and you don't get quite as much ability as you do in some of the suburbs. I have had a situation one time, a property that was built prior to 2007. 2007 is when a lot of these laws were enacted, that was already way over the impervious limit. I want to say it should have been at 40% impervious, and it was maybe 80. I mean, the entire lot was paved. And they actually allow a one-time 400 square foot addition. So for certain properties in Raleigh, if you don't have enough, they will grant you the ability to go over by 400 square feet for that one project. So that's an option for certain. If it's a newer developed property, that option isn't there, but just wanted you to know that it was there. And they do allow these stormwater deviation systems. So earlier I was talking about a buried septic tank with pumps that pump the water out. We're in the process right now near North Hills of designing one. It doesn't have to be a buried septic tank. It can be a water garden, an area, just a depression. It has to be somewhere that will catch a certain number of gallons of water, depending on how much over your impervious limit you are, so that it doesn't all wash downhill. But the challenge is most of the lots that have these issues are also a little smaller and pretty compact. And when you put in a stormwater mediation device, you have to record a maintenance agreement against the deed. So it's recorded that you have agreed that you would maintain this and make sure that it continues working. And then there are going to be easements that get recorded around it. So by the time we take a small lot and put a stormwater device and then an easement around it, sometimes you run out of room and it doesn't work. So that hiring an engineer and adding additional impervious to Raleigh properties is sort of hard to do. And if you know any builders, what the builders were all doing in Raleigh for the last few years is they were paying for a flood study, and they would go in and hire an engineer at a cost of, I think, $3,000 or $4,000. The engineer would look at that specific property, the stormwater equipment, pipes, everything to get to another body of water, and they would make an assessment and say, you know what, we can meet the state's goals of stormwater runoff control and allow you another 7% or something. There were little numbers, but for builders doing tear downs, it was worth it to them to pay for an engineer to help them get a little bit more impervious. That has gone away. And that's a great example of what I was saying earlier, that I don't want you to, I don't want to give too many details like they're the gospel, because sometimes they can change mid-year. So Raleigh, you would definitely want to get a survey and make sure that you've got some impervious left there.
Hey, Jeff, we
yeah.
have a quick question in the chat that I want to pop in here. Kinsey was just
absolutely.
asking, for the storm water retention systems, do they have to catch a minimum amount to qualify?
That's a good question here. Minimum amount qualified. I'll tell you what I remember about it is it was they wanted us to catch 3 inches of rain over the area that we were over impervious. So if you were 100 square feet additional, they would want to take the calculation of how much 100 square feet, 3 inches tall. We need to be able to capture that much rain and then allow it to slowly dissipate off over the next few days. We're doing one right now out in Wake County I think the engineer on that one was $4,000 or $5,000, and we had to put a catch basin at the end of the driveway, and then a long pipe that runs to the rear of the property where there's just going to be a depression with a dam at the back that's going to capture some of the rain. So I'm not sure about a minimum, but that you basically have to have an engineer design it for you. Does that help?
Yeah, very detailed.
Yeah, it does. I just didn't know if it was, and who's measuring it? Do you have like a little, gauge, or,
Oh,
is it tied to the permit? Like, is it a yearly thing? But
so
yeah, hence you
it
need
is.
an engineer, like you
Yeah,
said.
it is tied to the permit. There will be it'll be underneath the master building permit, and the engineer actually draws at the rear, I want this 6 feet wide and 12 feet long, and then 2 feet tall on the other side. They will draw what they're looking for. Then the instructions and the commitment to maintaining it gets recorded against the deed. And I'm not sure about the inspections. I think they can require an inspection. I don't know how often they actually do.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's not like a DIY. I'm putting just rocks and making it look pretty just
Yep.
to drain off from the gutter, right? It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, if it was a really, really tiny amount, I think they'll allow rain barrels. But and there's a chance that working through the county, they might look at it and say, look, you got 30 square feet here. We can let you go. It was just a rain barrel. So they'll help you. And it's another one of those things that you would just want to call the permitting body and ask them, because like Wake County and Raleigh allow the stormwater devices. I don't know that some of the other suburbs do. There's just the rules change from place to place. I would just ask the source and find out for sure that what your options are.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So we did Raleigh, Wake County. So their limits, I told you in Raleigh, we were looking at, 20%, 30% impervious allowed. Some of your areas in the county, if it's in the Swift Creek watershed, there are maps out there of this, that is a very sensitive watershed, and they allow 6% impervious. So in certain areas of southern Wake County, and actually up near Falls Lake too, I think, you basically can have 6% of your lot. So you can have a huge lot, and by the time you add the house and the driveway, there's just not much left. So that can be tough, but in certain areas they'll let you go up to 30% impervious. This is an interesting one. In some cases, impervious can be taken from another lot. So if you're in Wake County and the lot was developed after 2007, they will not allow you to build a stormwater mediation system. They just say you're either going to have to cut up some other impervious surface on this property or get a neighbor to sell you some. So we had a property right off of Tryon Road a couple years ago that the whole neighborhood was still being built. And when their listing agent sent me the plot plan and said, hey, they want a pool, can we do this? I took a look at it, and there were maybe 200 square feet of impervious left after they built the house. So they went back, and the builder got with the developer, and they took impervious from another lot, redeeded all of them, and gave our property a few hundred square feet more so that they could build the project. That's actually, when I was putting this together, I was actually trying to download all those documents, because it's crazy. You go in and look for the recorded documents, and the one that's referenced in the main property search with Wake County is the old one, and they've re-recorded another one on top of it that says they get more and some of the other properties get less. So you can transfer that, but it's one of those things. The engineer has to redo the file for the developer. It's got to go get re-recorded. It's a little bit of a process. Let's see here. And to go along with that, there's language in there. So 2006 in Wake County, some of a newer property, it'll say, this impervious limit shall not exceed. When it has that recorded on the plat, that's where there's just no way that you can add more. You have to either rip up something that's existing on the property or get some from a neighbor. We did touch briefly on these stormwater retention systems. It can be as simple as a rain barrel. They're required to catch equivalent of 3 inches of the whatever surface we're over limit. There's a maintenance plan that has to be recorded and has to be lived up to, and and you got to have some easements around it. So it's not desirable if if they love it, sometimes you just love something and you're willing to go to great lengths to have it. Then if that's the case, there might be a way to increase it and do everything that they want. But if from your standpoint, looking around, you might want to say there might be better options out here. So I did a quick little slide here to just briefly say what happens in the different towns. Cary is pretty interesting. Any property developed before 2007 in Cary has 0 restrictions. So when you go into Old McGregor and you see all these tear downs and they're paving the entire lot, they can do it. There's no restrictions. And then after 2007, the recorded plats will list how much impervious is allowed on each lot. Apex is currently not asking us. I called them something like 5 years ago and I said, hey, are you guys going to start tracking impervious data here? And they said, yeah, we're working on it. And I still don't think we have to submit impervious data for them. Holly Springs is pretty decent. When I called them at first, they said, you're fine unless you're in Scotts Laurel. So they have hot spots that they don't want people to put any more impervious, but they're not too tough. You can get by there. And then Wake Forest, I want to say there, we just go by the amount that's listed on the plat. So some of the smaller permitting departments, like the suburbs, not Raleigh or the county, haven't yet started to fully enforce it. So if you've got somebody coming in from out of town, they don't have an area they want to be in. Sometimes it's easier to be out in the suburbs, not the county, but like in a town in the suburb, and things seem to be a little bit more relaxed. So anything there? Any questions? All right.
My question is like,
Oh.
I guess, would you ask the seller, even though there's no rules? I guess I would ask the seller or the listing agent, right? Like, is there any existing flooding issues happening in the landscape? Because then if you,
Well, that's kind of a separate
right,
conversation, because if people can have drainage problems and have plenty of buildable land. You just need to redivert some water.
yeah,
So a property that's over its impervious limit has 0 the other negative item. It's just that from a state level, they decided we have to have some kind of rules to keep Wake County from paving the world. And here we are. So yeah, it's one of those things that you almost only know if you have that survey that lists the existing, and it will usually list what the maximum is also. But thank you.
Jeff, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting, town of Cary, if it's before 2007, doesn't have any restrictions. But I assume just because they don't have restriction does not necessarily mean that you can pave all the land and have no problem whatsoever with the drainage.
So with Cary, they are sticklers on certain things, like they will not let you pave within 5 feet of the property line, or we can't put our pool equipment there. They will require an as-built survey and watch you, but you can pave. They're not going to ask how many square feet of impervious do you have here in those properties.
But say so I live in town of Cary, happen to be, and my home was built way before 2007. And I'm not planning, but say if I'm planning to install a pool, but want to know what the potential effect will be, who, like somebody like you would be a good person to contact to?
You can run it by us. We're going to give you an opinion. If you wanted to really find out, I would call, if you call down to the town of Cary and just say, hey, I'm thinking about a project. I'd like to speak with the plan reviewer about the project, especially referring to any impervious restrictions I might have on the property. And somebody will call you back and they can pull it up. And if you've got a survey that you can send them, they can talk it through with you. And I just think that's the best way. It's just to go ahead and go ahead and just get it straight from the source.
Okay.
Neil joined. Hey, Neil.
Hello. I'm not sure if you could hear me.
I can.
Oh,
You're
you
late.
can hear me.
You're
Great.
late.
When I saw Jeff Darden, I said, I have to join this meeting. I'm so sorry. I'm a little late, but I'm listening.
Okay, we go. We don't want to distract everybody else. We'll finish up. But Yuka, did I answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Thanks.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. So we saw some easements on that first horror story that I showed you. Anything that's there that's recorded, we obviously can't build anything in it. That's the purpose of the easements, to keep us out. So you want to try to find out where those are and make sure they're not going to conflict with your area that you want to build. Septic systems. So we have to be, the body of water for a pool has to be 15 feet away from septic. If you wanted to build a garage or greenhouse or something, I'm not exactly sure if that rule would be the same, but we have to be 15 feet away from anything. And then we have to be 5 feet away from the septic lines. And sometimes they can be sort of close. So the septic as-built maps are never right. And they're sometimes not even remotely close. So since they're not very accurate, sometimes the best thing for us to do is to go ahead and apply for the permit. And when you do that, there's a $200 charge, and the county will send somebody out and actually locate exactly where the lines are. So I'm not exactly sure if you can do that pre-sales if you haven't applied for a permit already, but they will come out. And if they come out, they'll show you exactly where they are and try to compare it to the map. And I think more and more the counties are actually buying GPS tools so that they can go take really accurate location maps so that we don't build on top of or too close to septic systems. So sometimes if the septic repair is in your desired work area, you can move it. Sometimes you would have to get somebody that that redesigns septic systems to take a look. They'd have to do a site visit and find out what other options would be potentials to move that. If there is a septic system, we can't drive over it with heavy equipment. We don't want to damage it, and we can't dig. If we wanted to build up an area that is the active septic system, we can't take all of our leftover dirt and spread it over there. So that would damage the septic system also. And you even have to be careful if there's another area that you want to change or regrade that is the repair area. You can actually ruin the lot by going in and changing the grade of an area that is the future repair area. In maybe the second slide, I took the classes to become septic certified just so that we'd understand these rules a lot better. And in Wake County, there's really only maybe a foot or two of soil that's suitable for septic systems to actually filter through that wastewater and make sure that it hits our aquifer clean. And if a customer has if they have a repair area drawn on the map and they go in and they massively grade it and change the soils that are top, there's no longer a topsoil there to filter the septic, then it actually causes, you could actually ruin the property. You can actually remove the repair area so that in the future, if that property ever needed another septic system, there's really nowhere to put it. So we have to be very careful about the repair area and the septic systems, but we do a ton around septic systems. It's not a stopper. It's just something that it's a little more desirable to not have septic if you can do it. Let's see, setbacks. Each municipality is going to have setbacks, and then sometimes your HOAs will. So on the survey, it'll show building setbacks. And this is a pretty big one. It's important to realize that the setbacks are for the structure of the home itself. So you may see on a recorded plat that there's a 20-foot rear setback. For the pool, we're not the primary structure, we're an accessory structure. So we can actually go in most places to within 5 feet of the property line. So when you see a setback drawn on a survey, it doesn't necessarily count for the pool. We can usually go a little bit further back. And it's worth a call to the HOA. So if you go to McGregor West, their HOA documents state that the pools have to be X number of feet away from the rear property line. And years ago, they realized that was not going to work for people. So they basically allow a variance every time in that neighborhood because that's just what they've started doing. So it is worth a look into the covenants of the neighborhood to see what is said about pools. Normally it says they're allowed, no above ground, got to have a fence, that kind of stuff. But if you read through and it says, you know, there's a setback, it can't be here, 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 then you will want to run that by the HOA and get clarification on those rules. Some HOAs have a rule that the pool has to be behind the house, not over on a side yard or something of that nature, which sometimes people want. So it's worth double checking the covenants there to make sure that pools are allowed. Is there a restriction on whether it's right behind the house, and is there a restriction on the setback? And then this is another slide that steps back to that first little horror story. So the Department of Water Quality is the one that has created all of these rules about stormwater, creeks, the whole nine, and their goal is to try to keep from polluting the rivers. So if there is a blue line creek, which I can tell you what, there's a website that you can go to that you can just search, and it will show you exactly where. So let me think of a good one. Let's see here. This is an addition. So if we look here, if you guys can see that, you can see that there's a blue line here. Anything near that blue line, oh, can you see that? Is the map up? But you can see a lot of these areas, there's a blue line, and that is what they're protecting. So I want to say at this property, the Blue Line Creek is here. We built a couple on Rutherglen, and the town actually made us call the state and verify that we were not an extension of this blue line. So you can really quickly go into this map, find out if there is a Blue Line Creek behind the property, because that's going to make it to where you've got to have at least 50 feet off of that creek to make it work. Now I got to find, there we go. So creeks are big. That will slow things down a lot, and you can end up with a ton of property that you just can't build on if you're near a protected waterway. There's the map. And then it comes down to sloping properties. So obviously, if the property is not flat, we're going to have to build retaining walls to make the pool area flat, because we can't put it on a slope. So if you get to a property that's got more than a couple feet of elevation change from where you would want to start your pool or garage, whatever it is, to the back of the work area, the retaining wall can get really expensive. And we usually say budget about $100 a square foot. So, you know, if you take a look at it and you go length and width times 100, a retaining wall can be 30, 40, 50 or more pretty quickly. So sloping properties are going to cost the customer more. So it would definitely be desirable to find the flattest place you can. And I think that's all I've got. Did that generate any other questions from you guys, or maybe some more stories?
I think in a
It-
lot of ways it answered a lot of questions. It also is making me more confident that we need to be really good with our scripts and protecting our liability and what we will and won't be able to like guarantee for our clients. So I know Choice has a document that talks about material facts and what we're able to find out and how we'll help clients. So when this recording goes out, I'll make sure to include that because in these type of situations, that's a great thing to include for your clients just to kind of cover your bases. Kitsy, what were you about to say?
I was just gonna say, I think it's even more important to have that conversation with your client, right? It's like that wish list, when you're looking at houses and you know how you said I can't give you a guarantee until we're there. But obviously having a survey is important. But what do you envision, right? What does the dream look like? Like in the side, the front, placement, do you want a kitchen, do you want a waterfall, all those things. So at least when you look at properties, you could start knowing those questions to ask. But just ask more questions.
Yeah, and I don't want it to sound like a cop out, but really the best thing to do if they're hot and heavy on a property and you've got enough information that you think somebody should make a decision, or even if not, it's definitely a great idea. Just call whoever the permitting body would be, Cary, Raleigh, the Wake County, and just go ahead and run it by them. It's not going to hurt the property in any way or you, and just to get somebody there to say, oh yeah, that's going to be fine, or ooh, you might be tight here. It looks like you got an easement. My experience has been that they're always pretty helpful. I mean, they don't answer the phone on the first ring or anything, but they're helpful and they'll be able to tell that you're just trying to protect your client and they can help quickly. So I would definitely do that, especially if you're worried about liability issues and you got somebody that's like, we definitely need to build an ADU or garage or whatever it is.
Jeff, at what point in the process, if we have a buyer client that says exactly that they want to have a pool in their next house and we've found a property, we've done as much due diligence as we can on our end, calling municipalities and implementing what you've excuse me, recommended here, when do you recommend that we reach out to you? After closing or in the middle of the process?
If they're in the middle, feel free to reach out. We are a small company, so we cannot always jump immediately, but we'd love to have a chance to help you there. We've had some agents in the past that call us. We really don't have the bandwidth to give you an opinion on every property, but we'd love to. We get hot and heavy. We're definitely willing to help. We sometimes log in at night and take a quick glance, and we'll be an opinion, right? It'll be, to us, it looks like we should be okay. But if there's a red flag, we can definitely spot that. So we can do that. We've got some people that we've got some agents that send us their really nice listings that definitely everybody's going to ask about a pool, and we'll plop a generic pool in there with some deck around it and throw a little price on it. If the property's got a huge slope, we would need to go out there and take a look at it. But there are some properties that we if it's a big enough value and it's one of those, this house, everybody I know is going to ask me immediately about a pool. We'll sometimes put a quick design together for you so that when the question's asked that you can just hand it over. So we've got a few agents that we do that for already.
That's such a great idea.
Can you do the same thing for ADUs? And for ADUs, do you build on site or is it mostly prefab?
We actually don't build the ADUs. I mentioned it in there so I wouldn't be so selfish as the pool guy. No, so yeah, we actually don't build those. We build small structures. We'll build like a cabana, things like that. But when it comes to like a mini house, we don't build them. They're crazy expensive too. God, everything is.
I was just gonna say everything is, but I'll take a cabana any day.
Yeah, I mean, we're just finishing up one on Penny Road right now. If you guys drive through there, it's Penny near Holly Springs Road. We just built a pool with a hot tub, and he's got a 18 by 18 cabana with just a shed roof. It's kind of modern looking. We do that. We've done full bathrooms, which we're not excited to do that again. It's too many people to coordinate. But as far as the cabanas and stuff like that, that's actually becoming a big market for us, especially for people that maybe they don't want a pool and they say, I definitely want an outdoor kitchen. And then we say, well, we can build you the shade structure so that you can keep your outdoor furniture out of the rain and not have to take the cushions in all the time. And those are actually becoming a pretty hot topic for us. Everybody seems to want a place that they can host again. 2 years ago, the forecast for the Super Bowl was rain, and it didn't rain. But if your plans were to, hey, let's pop up a TV and watch it outside, you would have changed it. So we're starting to work on more of those cabana type structures just to help people get outside.
I love it. I love it.
I'd love to circle back to a conversation we had before we started recording, which is about new construction. Like we were talking about, new construction is getting a lot more comfortable allowing people to start building pools, especially like the luxury market, allowing people to build pools while they're under contract. I'm curious how that works on y'all's end. Actually, both with new construction and outside of that, what does financing typically look like for a pool? Let's start with new construction. Like, are you seeing builders in that scenario be open to lumping that price in with the purchase price, or is it almost exclusively its own gig? And do you guys do financing?
Yeah, most of the ones that we do through builders, the builder pays us and the customer rolls it into the mortgage. So I actually, in preparation for this, I called Stacy Ampson and talked to him a little bit about what kind of values he could give to properties, and he was saying that they've had 6-figure bumps on appraisals for the backyard. So that when I was in real estate, half the people that wanted to see a listing wanted to know how much it cost to fill the pool in, right? Pools weren't as nice. It seemed like a hassle. Now things have totally changed, and having a pool, from what I can tell, sells them pretty quickly. So I asked him, I said, what I used to tell people, you're not getting any of your money back. This is in our area, people don't put a value on it. But he says now it really kind of depends on the neighborhood, right? So in the neighborhood we brought up was Covert Farms. Like, everybody's got a pool up there. If you're shopping in Covert Farms and the house doesn't have a pool, it's not as desirable as the ones that do. So that they really do give value in a neighborhood like that. So it's neighborhood to neighborhood. But you can look around if you've got a neighborhood like a Bella Casa or something like that, where everybody's doing something in their backyard. If your backyard is a set of steps down to a 3x3 pad, your house is not as desirable, and the appraisal is going to reflect that. Kind of went on a tangent. My apologies.
No, it's good to know. Always curious. Also, be sure to check out the TAR report. He spends a lot of time making that. Awesome.
Yeah, he's
Any
great.
other questions, you guys?
And Kate, I will send you this this presentation. There are some live links in there. There's a link to the REL story. There's a link to the map where you can search to see if there's a Blue Line Creek. What's the other thing? There's a Raleigh tool that's supposed to tell you what your existing impervious is. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't know how accurate it is, but I'll send this just for those reasons. And if you guys, like I say, if you've got a listing that you just know, like, immediately everybody's going to ask me about a pool at this property. If you guys want to shoot it to us, we'll try to get it in queue to plop a little generic design in it and send something back to you that you can send them. And like I said, we've got a few people that already ask us just personal relationships, and we pop them in there. We don't go to a lot of detail. We don't know how accurate it'll be, but if you know that it's possible to put one in, it's going to make it easier for that buyer's agent if they're searching for what you just learned of.
Absolutely. Definitely an added layer of double crossing everything, and hopefully taking a little work off of the other side's plate, which I know they always appreciate. That sets a good tone for everything. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. We'll be sure to include your contact information and everything you provided when this recording goes out. I really appreciate it, especially the Blue Line map. I know that's something that, like you said, that can be hard to find. So just these little details can be so informative, and we look forward to working with you guys to put some pools in the yard, hopefully for our clients when that time comes. So thank you to you. Thank you to Carolina Creations for making time for us and being a great partner to us. Appreciate you.
All right, great. Thank you,
Jeff.
everybody. It's nice meeting you.
Hey.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.